Services of Lucknow University. He joined and he rather enriched the Integral University, the newly established Integral University at Lucknow in the Department of Humanities and also as the Dean also in that university. And he was one of
क्वेश्चन की
the
बारी आएगी तो ये लगा लिया
तुम भी सुनो बेटा.
produced 39 PhD theses and one DLit thesis. And exactly among those 39 PhD that he has produced, 2 of them were on Oriental studies. He is a very erudite scholar. He is a very active researcher. He is a very active editor, publishing his own journal. So we, in the course of our welcome you, sir, and request you to wish our students as well as with beautiful lecture. Sir, welcome, sir.
Okay. Professor Ibrahim and other friends. Professor Ibrahim described me as scholar, critic and editor. Scholar and critic I am not. I am basically a teacher, a classroom warrior and gladiator of literature, killing wrong notions and detrap elements. My only claim on Orientalism is that I supervised 2 doctoral investigations, one on Orientalism in Victorian poetry by Dr. Afzalur Rahman and the other on American Orientalism by Dr. Hafiz Muhammad Arif. Then I also supervised one master's thesis by a Yemeni student who is now based in Saudi Arabia. Now, as a teacher, as a speaker, I'm very fond of epigraphs and intertextuality. So, for this lecture of mine, I have composed, because when I don't find epigraphs written by others, then I write my own epigraphs. So 2 epigraphs are directly related, and those epigraphs are in the form of haiku. So as you know, haiku is an Oriental form of poetry. It is Japanese form of poetry appropriated by the West. It was appropriated by Ezra Pound, and then it has become very popular in the West and also in India. Professor R.K. Singh, my friend, is a leading poet of haiku in India. He is my friend, so I was also influenced. I also write haiku. So I have composed 2 haikus in English as epigraph for this lecture, and then 2 shares in Urdu related to my lecture, as you will see. Professor Ibrahim, I want your attention. You know, we have a popular ghazal by Hasrat Mohani, popularized by a Pakistani singer. हमको अपनी आशिकी का वो जमाना याद है, तो I wrote a pastiche on it. अपने ही हाथों से चेहरा छुपाकर उसका शर्माना याद है. Then the second one, रूठ जाना भी उसकी एक अदा है, रूठ जाना भी उसकी एक अदा है, ऐसी महबूबा किसके पास है और कहाँ है. Now the answer to this, किसके पास और कहाँ है, so I would like to tell you that the idea of sharmana or coyness is an Oriental virtue. The entire Middle Ages was dominated by one keyword, caritas, which means love of the divine. Because during the Middle Ages, the universe was theocentric. So everything was directed towards love of God. there is no writer who wrote about human love. This tradition of glorification of human love was started by Spanish Arab poets. From there, it traveled to France. It reached French Provençal poets, troubadours, and then from France it reached Italy. But in the process, glorification of human love was distorted as feudalization of the beloved. Now, from the Spanish Arab poets, the West appropriated optical imagery, concept of coyness, and focus on human love. But you see that they appropriated the Orient, but in the process, they distorted this. So from Dante's Beatrice, Petrarch's Laura, coming to Robert Herrick's Corinna, we have 8 literary builders, and all of them are treated as goddess. This is what is called feudalization of love, all in all. And so as Dushyant Kumar says, the Western beloved was a goddess who commanded awe and wonder in the lovers. So Dushyant Kumar says, जब तुम आती हो रेलगाड़ी की तरह, मैं थरथराता हूं किसी पुल की तरह. Now, in entire Renaissance poetry, we have this feudalization of beloved. So, the West has been appropriating things from the Orient, and sometimes they distort, sometimes they assimilate. So, I wrote these 2 shares, 2 couplets, to illustrate the idea of coyness, the idea of Sharmana, which I find is an Oriental virtue, not found in Western girls. It is only found in Oriental girls. And what happens that the West appropriated the tradition of Spanish Arab poets, but in the process, the human love was distorted. Now, this tradition of beloved continues. And in 17th century, the other haiku I'll tell you a little later. In 17th century, we have Andrew Marvell. And Andrew Marvell, in his famous poem to his choir mistress, says, had we world enough and time, this choirless lady were no crime. We would sit and think which way to walk and pass our long love's day. Then notice the lines which come. Thou by the Indian Ganges side shouldest rubies find, I by the tide of Humber would complain. So initially, while I was teaching this poem, I thought that Andrew Marvell is, by juxtaposing Humber and the Ganga, is making common uncommon. He is using the device of Russian formalism, defamiliarization, or estrangement. But on closer inquiry, I found that in ancient India, rubies found on the bank of the Ganga river was put on by young virgins as an amulet. Now, as an Indian, I even didn't know this fact. So later I saw a serial called Ganga Ki Dhi, and I found that in Eastern India, still there is a ritual practice. Before marriage, a girl is dipped in the water of the Ganga, and if she is drowned, it means she is not a virgin. So Andrew Marvel's lover says to his beloved that you should go on the bank of the Ganga and find rubies. Now, his tone may be a little ironic, but here is the creative annexation of the Orient. Creative annexation. And this was my first encounter with the Orient. Then we have, just a minute. We have Alexander Pope appropriating the Orient in the Rape of the Lock, in the famous toilet scene. Toilet in the 18th century did not mean what it means today. Toilet then meant dressing room. So Belinda is preparing for the Hampton Court party, and Pope describes her in the toilet scene. Unnumbered treasures open at once, and here the various offerings of the world appear. From each she nicely culls with curious toil and decks the goddess with the glittering spoil. This casket India's glowing gems unlocked, and all Arabia beats from yonder box. The tortoise here and elephant unite, transformed to combs, speckled in the white. Now, we have also a similar passage in Paradise Lost, where in Andrew Marvell, in Pope, in Milton, at least I don't find any distortion. We have appropriation of the Orient, but there is no distortion. That's why at the very outset, I would like to tell that Orientalism is not a homogeneous discourse. We have American Orientalism, French Orientalism, British Orientalism, German Orientalism, Hungarian Orientalism, and even Russian Orientalism. Then there are so many models. All theorists, all critics agree to a working definition of Orientalism. That Oriental means study of the Orient, but they differ on purposes. What are the purposes? That's why I titled my lecture as Models of Orientalism. Now, we have Kejriwal model, O.P. Kejriwal. His model is called Old Orientalism. Then we have Edward Said. His model is called New Orientalism, although he starts from the Persian War in Greek times, I'll tell you. Then we have Ornamental Orientalism by David Carradine. And then we have Raymond Schwab's model of assimilation. And then we have appropriation model. Now, all these models are at work in the study and practice of Orientalism. Now, Said becomes popular because he has a post-colonial agenda. So, you will be laughing when you know that in 1980, I met Edward Said in the classroom, although metaphorically. A student came running to me. He showed me a piece of paper and he asked me, "Sir, can there be two reporting verbs? And if two reporting verbs are all right, where is the reported speech?" So I told him, "Show me the piece." So I noticed that Edward was written, then Said was also in capital S. So he said, Edward Said pointed out. Then I told him, look, Said is not the reporting verb here. Said is a name. He is a Palestinian critic, Edward Said. Now, Edward Said published his book Orientalism, consisting of 3 unified essays in 1978. And his thesis is contained in the subtitle. The subtitle of Orientalism is Western Conception of the Orient. Now, Said's book is not about the colonized. It is not about the marginal. It is not about the marginality. And that is why Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak was quick to point out this thing, and I'll quote. I'm quoting Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak because Edward Said's Orientalism is called the source book in the discipline of post-colonialism, and it was no doubt a groundbreaking work. And Edward Said, Homi Bhabha, and Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, they are called the Trimurti of post-colonialism. But Said's book is not about marginality. It is about othering. So please notice what Gayatri says. Said's book was not a study of marginality, nor even of marginalization. It was the study of the construction of an object for investigation and control. The study of colonial discourse directly released by work such as Said's has, however, blossomed into a garden where the marginal can speak and be spoken, even spoken for. Edward Said's theory has ideological underpinnings, and his book was about othering. His book was about othering. His main thesis is that the West annexed the Orient to distort it. And now, my 2 haikus. And by the way, haiku is a Japanese form of poetry, and there has been a long tradition of assimilation. You know, I have been studying an Oxford Dillett, Warrior Edwin, who worked with Professor Garrett of Keats fame. He came to India, spent his entire life. He was lusting for knowledge. So he translated folk songs of tribals. That is, he translated the 4th word literature into English. So in the introduction to this book, W.C. Archer says, and please listen because it has something to do with us. Fitzgerald, Omar Khayyam, Burton's translation of the Arabian Nights, Arthur Wallis, The Tale of Genji, all these slightly modified their times by the insertion into culture of new moods and attitudes borrowed from abroad. And then he quotes Charles Mays, who had written a foreword to Images from the Arab World by Herbert Howard and Ibrahim Shakrullah, published in 1944. And in the foreword to this book, he says, the Oriental literatures stretch away from us to the other sides of the world but it is a shrinking world. And we can expect in the next few hundred years new and surprising cultural cross fertilization. Although the impact of Japanese, Chinese, Indian, Persian, and Arabian art and culture has modified our own patterns of perception to a marked extent. But we may be sure that the interpretations that have reached us so far are partial reflections only, and that great riches remain to be assimilated. So notice the word. He uses the word assimilation, and this is also Raymond Schwab's thesis that Orientalism as Romanticism, and it means assimilation. There's a book, India, because for Said, Orient means only the Middle East. Orient means the Middle East. Orient means Iran. Orient means India. Orient means Japan also. But Said's focus is only on the Middle East. And he links Orientalism with an unholy alliance among empire, enlightenment, colonialism, etc., etc. But as I told you, he says Western conception. Now, conception is one thing, perception is another thing, and construction is another thing. So according to Edward Said, the West has always conceived the Orient as the other and has retained all the good qualities for themselves and transferred all the bad qualities to the Orient. Now, Arab historians tell us that Cleopatra, the Egyptian queen, was a very competent administrator. But Plutarch, the Roman historian, distorted her character and presented her as sexy Cleopatra, as a seductress, as a dynamo of sexual energy. Now, this distortion has been taking place since times immemorial. In Langland, we have this fact that our beloved prophet, peace be upon him, was a cardinal in the service of the Pope in Rome. And when he could not become the Pope, he fled to Arabia and started his own religion. Now, this is distortion. So, in the Middle Ages, during Crusades, even earlier, travelers went to the Palestine, and when they returned, they fed false rumors, propaganda, because initially it was a war between the cross and the crescent. It was a war between Christianity and Islam. Now, in Elizabethan literature, we have interchangeable use of Saracens, Turks, and Moor. So in Elizabethan period, we have the annexation of the Orient as exotic land, but there is distortion. Now after that, not all Orientalists of the West distorted the East, but many of them did. We have the patent case of Edward Fitzgerald. He was an Orientalist. He was urged by Cowell to study Persian poetry, Cowell also gave him a manuscript of Omar Khayyam. But notice, Omar Khayyam was a mystic full of spirituality. But in the translation of Fitzgerald, he was degraded to a sensualist, to a hedonist. Even the French translator of the Ruwaiyat of Omar Khayyam was annoyed with Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald used Omar Khayyam as an oriental mask to discuss or deal with his own problems of the Victorian age. So, Said's model is powerful, there is no doubt. And in colonial discourse, we have this distortion of the Orient. We have in A Passage to India, Dr. Aziz is presented as a feminized character. But the paradox is this: if he is a feminized character, why is he accused of raping Adela Quested? So, Edward Said's thesis is anti-Western, and for true Orientalists, those who lusted for knowledge, those who studied the Orient, annexed the Orient, and this is called academic Orientalism, scholarly Orientalism, or Kejriwal calls it old Orientalism. Now, in order to condense Said's tenets, I wrote 2 haikus. I hope you enjoy, because that is my own. Rise of Prospero, and as you know, haiku is 575. Rise of Prospero, exotic Orient Calibanized, Saidian othering. The exotic Orient was declared savage, superstitious, irrational. And this Western view has been internalized by the Oriental people. R.K. Narayan was never given the Nobel Prize because he presents Indian view of India. But V.S. Naipaul, a rootless intellectual, was given Nobel Prize because he projects Western view of India as an area of darkness. So V.S. Naipaul, in his Indian trilogy, criticizes India, declares India as an area of darkness. But look at Sir Edwin Arnold, a true Westerner, a true Orientalist, writing the poem The Light of Asia about Lord Buddha and calling it Light of Asia. So we have different models, but first, so Rise of Prospero. Now this line of mine refers to Foucauldian knowledge power nexus. Those who have knowledge, have power, have the pen. So rise of, and the Tempest is an allegory of colonialism. Rise of Prospero. Then exotic Orient Calibanized. The Orient was Calibanized, declared illiterate, dark, savage, irrational. We have a famous video song by Alisha Chennai, Made in India. That is a perfect example of Edward Said, because Western view of India or Western view of Arab culture and others was internalized by many of them. Then the other, what the West says is universally true. So I have the other haiku. Exotic Orient framed Eurocentric universalism, Saidian othering. So Said's book was a study of, study of the other, the Oriental other. But there are others also. In the 18th century, Arabian Nights was first translated into French, then in English, and because of increasing awareness of the East, we had what Raymond Schwab says, La Renaissance Orientale. There was Oriental Renaissance, and it was linked with Romanticism. Now, we have a famous poem, Ode to the West Wind, by P.B. Shelley. Now, if I say that the West Wind incorporates or assimilates Shiva motif, Shelley had read Shiv Puran, and Lord Shiva is not only the god of destruction, but also the god of creation. And the west wind is Lord Shiva's Tandav. On the earth, in the sky, in the sea. And the tone, Shelley's tone, is devotional. And Shelley intellectualizes Lord Shiva in his poem. Destroyer and preserver. Lord Shiva destroys things, then recreates. We have renewal, we have recontinuation. So here, there is no evidence of Orientalism. But the fact is, so Raymond Schwab's model that Orientalism aroused Romanticism. Even German Orientalist Schlegel said that real Romanticism in the Orient, distance lens. Now, there are many other examples. In 18th century, we had the rise of Oriental romance under the influence of Persian romances and Indian romances. We have Wadek, we have Dr. Johnson's own Rasidas. In Wadek, the writer uses the Freudian method of displacement. He transfers his own sexuality in relation to his cousin to the caliph and distorts the image of the caliph. But towards the end of the 18th century, there was Oriental Renaissance. Byron was impacted by the tradition of Oriental romance. Arnold wanted to write an epic throughout his life, but his entire sensibility was anti-epic. It was elegiac. It was reflective. So notice what happens. He used Firdausi Shahnama for his poem Sohrab and Rustam, but ultimately it is not a Persian text. It becomes a Victorian text of elegiac dimension. Now, critics of Edward Said have pointed out that the way Said has used the term Orientalism, it has become a pejorative term of denigration, term of abuse for those Orientalists, because all Westerners do not distort. Some of them are enlightened. They are lusting for knowledge. They have spent their entire life in studying the Orient. And this, according to Kejriwal, is old Orientalism, the Orientalism of William Jones, who founded the Asiatic Society of Bengal. And true Orientalists want a kinship between the East and the West. They want a universal global knowledge. Wherever there is knowledge, they want to annex. Now, as I told you, O.P. Kejriwal's model is old Orientalism, and it laid emphasis that West is goaded or motivated by a desire to know the East, to enshrine its age-old wisdom. Then we have Edward Said's model. Now, Varier Redville is one such. He spent his entire life in India studying the tribals of India in Nepal, in Orissa, in Chhattisgarh, and he translated all the tribal songs. I have been reading him of late, but I don't find any kind of distortion. I find that he has enriched, he has rendered a valuable service. You know, for the British in India, we use AAA, triple T. They were traders.
रेट में पहले के वो चल जाएगा ना ये
Pardon?
Sir, please
Any
go ahead.
interruption?
There was some disturbance from some participant. We have solved it out. Please go ahead, sir. सर आपका माइक म्यूट हो गया है.
अब्दी साहब अनम्यूट करिए.
सर आब्दी सर आपका माइक म्यूट हो गया है. सर आब्दी सर आपका माइक म्यूट हो गया है.
आया आवाज आई?
जी आ गई सर.
Are. So what I want to say that Kejriwal model talks of academic, scholarly, genuine Orientalism, where Western researchers, Western Indologists, Western lovers of Persian mysticism have spent their entire life in a dedicated manner. So for them, Said's term is a pejorative term. You remember Dr. Johnson using the word metaphysical for John Donne as a term of abuse. But then we also have David Carradine's ornamental Orientalism, that in Western literature, Orientalism was used to enhance the appeal as an exotic. You know, in a number of Bond movies, plot does not require, but in a Bond movie, we have an episode called The Tears of Allah. It is not part of the plot, but the Tears of Allah episode is inserted to increase the exotic appeal of the Bond movie. Likewise, in another Bond movie, we have reference to Hindu Kush and how the Hindu pilgrims go there and put the burning coal of rocks on their hands to test their patience, their control, etc. Now, appropriation model of Orientalism is found in American literature. In classic mid-19th century American literature of the American Renaissance, of New Brahmins, Edgar Allan Poe, Emerson, the focus was on creative annexation of Persian mysticism, of Sadi, of Rumi, and Indian tradition. By the way, in the Westland, what the fire sermon section is a case of creative annexation of the famous sermon of Lord Buddha on the fire of lust. And he fuses them with Saint Augustine's sermon on human lust. So where is distortion? Where is distortion? So my view is that I do not know about 20th century American Orientalism, their foreign policy, but in mid-19th century, the New England Brahmins, they founded Oriental Society. Emerson wrote an essay on Persian poetry, and he incorporated all these in this poetry. We have Herman Melville annexing the Matsya avatar in Moby Dick. We have Emerson writing about Rumi, about Sadi, Persian mystic tradition. So Americans were fascinated with the Persian mysticism and Eastern spirituality. Even in a poem like Meru, W.B. Yeats posits the West vis-a-vis the East, where he praises, the ancient Indian wisdom. So what from my limited study, as I told you, I'm not a scholar, I'm a teacher. But what I find that as late as 1960s, we have Allen Ginsberg, who is a beat poet. He annexes Baal songs of Bengal, Eastern mysticism, sitting at the Ghat, Manikarnika Ghat, meditating. They have also annexed. So we have different models at work, and all of them are not fully applicable to all the writers. Saidian model is applicable to some writers. Old Kejriwal model is applicable to those dedicated academics, researchers. Take the case of Verrier Evelyn, take the case of Sir Edwin Arnold and numerous others and German Orientalism, translating the Upanishads, Shastras. It was in the Middle Ages that the West started studying what is called linguistic Orientalism. They started studying the Hebrew, then they started studying Arabic, Persian, and during the colonial time, Indian sacred texts, because they wanted to study Greek and Roman texts in Arabic translation long before the Italian humanist Valla translated the poetics. Arabs had translated the poetics into Arabic, and so they wanted to study Arabic. This was the pattern: Hebrew, Arabic, Persian, and then Sanskrit. So they started because they wanted to know. And sometimes, you have always, as you know, that fascination for the other is embedded in human genes. We are always fascinated by the other. So the West was fascinated by the other, but it is also a fact that there always has been binaries from the beginning down to the present. In the beginning, it was West and East, then Occident and Orient, then First World and Third World. And now we have this binary of global North and global South. So West, Occident, First World, global North. They always have tried to exploit the Orient. And they presented it as exotic for their own sensual pleasure. But I find American Orientalism, mid-19th century, very constructive. And now this is what I can say about this subject. There are so many, but these are the models. Raymond Schwab says that just as the Renaissance impacted European writers, and the Renaissance was rooted in translation of Greek and Roman texts. So he talks of La Renaissance Orientale, that the Oriental Renaissance somehow popularized the vogue of Romanticism. And I gave you one example that how Shelley was fascinated by Kashmir, in Prometheus Unbound. The location is that of Kashmir, where Prometheus is chained to the rock. And Kashmir is also the habitat of Shaiva philosophy. So he had read Shiv Puran and he appropriated it. So we have assimilation model. Raymond Schwartz model is of assimilation. Then we have this appropriation model, and all these models are at work in Orientalism. Now, in Orientalism, Orient is the hero. The Orient is the hero. And as you know, some writers treat characters as the other, as their own. So sometimes Orient is their own, they annex it, sometimes they other it. Now, Edward Said, he has been criticized on a number of counts. And one, I mentioned that for true Orientalists, this is a pejorative term. Edward Said's thesis may be good because he pioneered secular criticism. He pioneered post-colonial studies, his method, and the key of his thesis lies. So as I said that Western conception is one thing, perception is another thing, construction is another. So he confuses between three, but somehow he has become famous. He is now a big intellectual. I am no big intellectual to criticize Said. All critics, all Orientalists have picked holes in his theory, and they say he is totally anti-Western. He has done more damage to Orientalism because now Western scholars will think twice before entering the area of Orientalism because they will feel insulted. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for such a beautiful and such an enriching lecture. And now I invite my colleague, Saket. Saket, if you are ready with the questions and if the participants are also ready with the questions, please.
You know, it is a very huge area, very amorphous area. I can go on speaking, but my focus was on, because I always deliver focus lecture. Models of Orientalism. Models I have pointed out. We find it. I don't know much about German Orientalism, but German Orientalism is supported by Raymond Schwartz' La Renaissance Orientale, where he links Orientalism with Romanticism. And one example I have given you, Shelley's Ode to the West Wind, where we have the assimilation of Shiva motif.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Saket, are you ready with the questions?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Before we move on to, I'm sure there are many questions, but we have many academicians, well-known academicians with us here as well. Huma ma'am, if you want to speak something. Huma ma'am.
Sir, Huma is from your city, she is in Lucknow.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. So nice to listen to you. Abdi Saab, I think you must be recognizing me. Huma, I have met you several times at your department.
You are Huma Yaqub, I know. I know. I don't forget faces. Names I may forget, but I'm fascinated with faces, so I don't forget.
Okay, okay. Thanks a lot, sir, for remembering me. And yes, it was indeed, and it is always such a delight to listen to your lectures. And this particular field was of interest, of my interest. And you were speaking about Orientalism and Edward Said and all of that. So definitely, your perception and the insight that you gave into this particular topic, because my thesis was also relating to Orientalism, and I had discussed particularly
You
Thomas
know,
More.
in AMU, there is Professor A.R. Kidwai. He is an expert on Orientalism. And in AMU, there was an earlier professor who worked on his thesis called Influence of Orientalism on Byron and Moore. So
Yes,
in
yes.
Aligarh is there. And let me tell you, I have tried to sum up the whole discourse called Orientalism. One thing more, I am reminded of A.O. Lajoie essay on the discrimination of romanticisms. And then we talk of feminisms. So now there is no monolithic discourse called Orientalism. We should talk of Orientalisms.
Yes,
There are so
definitely,
many
sir.
shades, so many varieties.
Yes, you are absolutely right, and that is what I am saying, that this was indeed very insightful, because till now I have been looking at Orientalism from Edward Said's point of view. So
Edward Said is not the only intellectual in the world, my dear.
yes,
I
yes.
have produced 3 mini Edward Saids. My research scholars who worked on Edward Said, Dr. Hafiz Muhammad Arif, is an exponent of American Orientalism. He is an Arabic scholar. Then one of my students is now a big Arabic scholar. He wrote a book on medieval Arabic literary criticism, where his MA English came in handy. He traced the influence of Aristotle on them. Then one Yemeni student who is now in Saudi Arabia. So I may not be Edward Said, but I have produced many mini Edward Saids.
Yes, definitely.
No,
We
you may
all
not.
agree. We all agree to that. Abdi Saab, definitely you are like quite humble when you always insist on that you are a teacher, but you are a
I'm
great
not only a
teacher
teacher, I'm a classroom warrior and
You
gladiator of literature. I have
indeed you
always
are.
killed false notions. And as a teacher, I do not give one perspective. As a teacher, we must present all the perspectives on the discourse. That I tried to do. Whether I have succeeded or failed, it is up to you to decide.
No, no, definitely. This was such an like very informative and in your very charming style that you delivered this lecture. So indeed, it was very insightful, and you of course highlighted about these other types of Orientalists that you talked about, like William Jones, who had contributed so much to the Oriental studies and his establishment of the Oriental Asiatic
Yes, we
Society.
must be grateful to the West for
Yes, yes.
understanding the Indies. And we have Indology departments in Western countries. In European universities, Arabic was started to be taught. Persian was started to be taught. So we must not be ungrateful. Edward Said is a Palestinian subaltern. So he thinks that the Orient means Middle East. There is India also. You know, Emerson wrote his
Yes,
poem
yes.
Brahma.
Mhm.
Actually, in Vedanta, they say that there is Atman and then there is Brahman. And then the caste Brahmin, the caste is Brahmin. But he committed an honest error. Instead of entitling his poem Brahman, he called it Brahma. So these are called honest mistakes.
Mhm.
So we have to distinguish between honest mistakes committed by Westerners and willful misrepresentation.
Yes, yes.
Whereas Edward Said's entire focus is on willful misrepresentation, and he does not take into account academic Orientalism. He just in passing mentions William Jones. He does not take into account German Orientalism. He does not talk of Hungarian Orientalism. He does not talk of Russian Orientalism.
Definitely, sir. Yes, you are very right. But I think only thing that we can say in defense of Edward Said is that he is, of course, giving his particular theory. He is talking about those.
But there is a fashion in India. There is a fashion in India. I know I have studied. In India, there was no onslaught of theory on the campuses. But when there was this onslaught of theory on the campuses, then, metropolitan universities, big universities, their students started, throwing Bakhtin, Derrida, Michel Foucault. So I told my Mufassir students that I'll take you up to the par with them. So I taught all this to them, because let me tell you, we must not only teach Albert Camus, we must also teach Ramus and Bakridis. This is my attitude as a teacher.
So well said. Yes, definitely, sir. Because
so for Albert Camus, Edward Said is an icon. But I have to give the other viewpoint. A teacher should not be partial, because a discourse is a neutral discourse. You have to enter the spirit of the discourse. Maybe I like personally I like. Now Edward Said says he criticizes some French writers in person, but he admits that he is fascinated with them. So it is a kind of ambivalence, and this ambivalence is there in the Occident and Orient. There has been an ambivalent love-hate relationship. Sometimes you love, sometimes you hate.
Definitely. But sir, Edward Said is actually writing from a particular theoretical point of view, and that he has quite amply.
No, he has been criticized also for not acknowledging earlier writers from whom he borrowed his instances. He does not admit, Michel Foucault, from where he took this knowledge power nexus. There are so many writers. We have Egyptian professor of Orientalism, and he is indebted to them also, but he does not mention. So please do not concentrate on Edward Said to me. Edward Said is one of the theorists of Orientalism. There are others also. So what I have done, because I know Professor Ibrahim, he had attended one of my lectures 10 years ago. So when he requested, so I am a teacher. So as a teacher, I will give you all the facets of the discourse.
That's what I'm reiterating, that yes, we came to know about all the other
and I try to be as lucid so that there is no unnecessary questions, just for asserting the presence.
No, sir, I was just
sometimes in seminars, sometimes people ask questions for the sake of asking, just to show to others that they are there. I am very clear, very lucid, very simple.
Yes, sir. It was indeed very lucid, and I enjoyed.
No doubt in your mind. And as you know, all knowledge is not my province. I may not have touched something, but that is a different thing. I am a human being. I am not Bacon. I do not have encyclopedic range of knowledge. I stick to my discourse and the topic.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot. It was indeed wonderful listening to you and enlightening us on all the major models of Orientalism. That was again, I thank you once more. Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks, Dr. Yahya, also for providing us this opportunity to listen to Professor
Thank
Abdi.
you so much. Thank you. Actually, I wanted to lecture on 2 or 3 hours. I have the material. I have the knowledge. But I'm 72. So the gladiator gets tired after 1.5 hours.
Yes.
It was so beautiful, sir. It was so beautifully placed.
If there is any genuine clarification, so I am ready to answer. Let there be no doubt. But all these are, and all these models cannot be applied to one writer. Some model to some writer, because there has been distortion. There has been irrational. As a theory, the West retains all the good qualities to them, transfer all the bad qualities to the Orient.
We have
Professor Ibrahim.
something.
Pardon?
Bhai, you want to say something?
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum assalam. Tabish bhai, how are you?
I'm fine, sir. And I'm very thankful to Dr. Yahya, who seems to be my elder brother and sometimes is a guy as a guide. And sir, it's really a wonderful moment for me, although I was just a little bit late because I had an
So
MBA program.
you missed my shairi.
Yes, sir.
You missed
I'm
my
very
shairi.
sorry for that.
That was the beauty of my lecture.
Yeah, I was preoccupied with some NBA work that is going on in our campus. So I just anyhow managed to get some time. And it was
उसका रूठ जाना भी उसकी एक अदा है, उसका रूठ जाना भी उसकी एक अदा है, ऐसी महबूबा किसकी हो कहाँ है? तो
mashallah.
ऐसी महबूबा ओरिएंट में है, ओरिएंट में,
Yes, sir.
वेस्ट में नहीं है ऐसी महबूबा.
I was a little curious to be a part of this webinar because my topic was PhD topic was also holistic worldview and thought in the major literature and system of the Renaissance and the modern age. So somehow it was like correlating with my topic and all, and it was really refreshing the things ahead. And your each and every word was like a pearl
I
of
told
wisdom
you
for me,
that
sir.
there are Saracens in the Fairy Queen. They are portrayed as evil. Then we have Turks and Moor. The Moor means North African Muslims. Othello, Othello never belonged to Shakespeare. Othello is an alien. He is a Moor. So when he finds that Desdemona is faithless to him, so he sacrifices Desdemona for propitiating the tribal gods because of infidelity. So there are, but in Elizabethan drama and literature, we have ornamental Orientalism as a backdrop, as we have in Pope's Rape of the Lock, the toilet scene, in Paradise Lost. He refers to Egyptian wealth and wealth of Assyria, etc., etc. That is what is called ornamental Orientalism. Then Raymond Schwab makes a comparison between the 16th century Renaissance and the Oriental Renaissance. How Renaissance activated English writers, how Oriental Renaissance activated European exponents of Romanticism, British Romantics, etc.
Yes, sir. That's really wonderful, sir, to listen to you. I think it is my first chance to listen to you, and I'm interacting for the first time to you and Yahya,
Thank
sir.
you for
It
patiently
was really
listening to me.
And thank you, Yahya, sir, once again, and thank
You
you,
are
sir.
welcome.
I wish you a very happy life ahead.
Anytime.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. This has been
Thank you.
really a very enlightening session for all of us. Yes, as you said, that not focusing only on the science model, but many other names as well. Thank you so much, sir. This has
Let
been
me
very
clear, I have been and should now his idea.
model, but many other names as well. Thank you so much, sir. This has been very,
Let
very
me tell you, my dear, I have been a teacher, and a teacher should not impose his ideology, his likings on his listeners. A teacher should be neutral. In in that novel, The Prime of Miss Brody, the teacher imposes her ideology on her students, and the result is tragic. The teacher should treat every discourse as a neutral discourse and then give a rounded discussion of the demands of that discourse. So I think Professor
for all of us.
Yahya Ibrahim's discourse wanted me to deal all the facets that I have done through the title Models of Orientalism. I think I have done justice to the subject.
Yes, sir. It was not only that you did justice, you did it in such a convincing and such an enriching manner that we were able to see many angles. And certainly this is...
There are
this is
many
what-
references, many poems which I did not discuss because, for me, classroom matters, faces matter. So in the classroom, when my students are before them, I tell them, जब आप सामने हैं तो जमाने की जरूरत क्या है? But here you are not physically present. You are 1,000 miles away from me. But anyway, I see your faces and I can say, जब आप सामने हैं तो जमाने की जरूरत क्या है?
Say. Now I request my colleague, Professor Saket Kumar, to propose the vote of thanks. Saket.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for this session. This has been very fruitful. Thank you for taking out the time for us and enlightening us with such a wonderful lecture. Thank you so much, sir, because we know in this COVID time, it has been a very tough task for all of us, and we have become a bit digitized, all of us. So thank you
Anyway,
so much, sir.
I am thankful to Karim City College. I am thankful to Professor Ibrahim and the principal of the college to having given me this opportunity to interact, because nowadays, I don't travel much. So it was a good opportunity to connect with you and share my views. And I said, I have always been a teacher, a classroom warrior and gladiator of literature. So please forgive me for my, this aggressive attitude, but I put forth my point of view in a very aggressive manner. Because if I'm convinced, then I would like to make other people convinced of what I say. If I'm wrong, you can point out.
Yes.
No, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया सर, बहुत सारा शुक्रिया। एक बार फिर से पूरा लाइव हो गया सर, वो पुरानी यादें लाइव हो गई।
चलिए, बहुत अच्छा, थैंक यू once again.
थैंक यू सर। आदाब सर।
आदाब आदाब।